Just kidding. I love the Knicks. That's what James Dolan is saying. What's up, guys? This is EJ Stewart, joined by Tommy Beer. This is Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast and Audacy WFAN original. We have plenty to talk about on this episode. We'll be talking about James Dolan backtracking from his comments about not having joy, not having fun in owning the New York Knicks. Now he says, I love owning the Knicks, and I'm not selling the team. Do we believe him? We'll discuss. Also, is there optimism that an Emmanuel Quickley extension could be around the corner? One of the beat writers for the Knicks says that he's hearing that there is hope and there is a lot of excitement, and the optimism is there that a deal can get done for Emmanuel Quickley to remain a New York Knick. And some familiar voices could be joining the MSG booth. We actually just heard them in the NBA Finals just a couple of months ago. So we'll give you all of that and plenty more right after this.
If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
So as I said, it's EJ Stewart, Tommy Beer. This is Orange and Blue Bloods, and Tommy, a lot to get to on this episode. But how you feeling after this weekend of football action, where your Lions got back on track?
Great weekend of football. Put the smackdown on the Falcons. It was weird. Like it's rare that I've, in years past that I've gone into a game confident, but they want to be a good team this year. They want to be a great team. You can't lose back-to-back home games against beatable opponents. And the defense really stepped up the D-line. So yes, even though feels like it's been raining for about 70 straight hours here in New York.
It's crazy.
We had a great weekend of football from college on Saturday and the pros on Sunday, and Lions getting the W, fantasy teams won. So yes, a good weekend all around.
Tommy says it feels like it's been raining for the last 72 hours. For Jets fans, it feels like it's been raining since Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles, to be honest. We're being real. It's been a dark cloud hanging over our heads pretty much since Aaron Rodgers went down, and that continued on Sunday with a pathetic showing against the Patriots. So I'm not doing well when it comes to my football team and how things are going. And I know that many Jet fans are struggling. My teeth are still intact. I have not spit out my teeth like a gentleman that was at MetLife Stadium yesterday that got so angry at what he was seeing from Zach Wilson that he actually literally lost his teeth. So it hasn't gone that bad, but it has been a rough time for the
Why haven't they brought in – obviously, Wilson is not the answer. So why haven't they brought in a backup, I guess, to make Wilson feel better as if he's not having competition? Is that the explanation?
I really think that it's pretty much a thing where they really want to see this Zach Wilson thing work. And they feel like if they brought in somebody that's going to be him looking over his shoulder, that in their head, they feel like, well, we may never know how he would have played if we really embraced him as the guy. It's insane. It's totally idiotic to continue to move the way the Jets are moving. But look, if you want to know more about, again, your boy EJ who hosts the show, I mean, I talk about the Knicks, but then I have the Jets to worry about. I have the Mets to worry about. So not a lot of joy in my life when it comes to sports with the teams I root for. But yeah, it's tough football weekend for Jets fans. Great weekend for Tommy. Our producer James has got his Bucks playing later tonight. They're 2-0. So everybody else has a winning record on the podcast except for my guys who dropped to 1-2. But again, this is Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast and Audacy WFAN original, a podcast you can get wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Be sure to hit the auto download feature on your streaming service. Get these episodes every time we drop. And also be sure to check us out on YouTube where you can catch the full episodes and clips from the episode on the WFAN channel. So let's begin with James Dolan, who is backpedaling much like a Sauce Gardner would when it comes to his comments about owning the Knicks. So he spoke to Barron's this week, and he basically wanted to clarify things. He said in this article written by Barron's, quote, "People misunderstood my comments to the Times. I love the teams and enjoy being the owner and manager of them. There's absolutely no thought of a full sale of the teams." So when Dolan previously in the week had talked about having no joy in owning the New York Knicks or the Rangers, that he kind of loathed the fact that most fans kind of saw themselves as pseudo owners and pseudo general managers, and that he basically called it kind of a boring kind of existence, a sleepy economy to be the owner of a sports franchise. He casted doubt that maybe he wanted to continue to own this team for much longer. And I said on the show that I think that this was the soft launch of him putting out there that he may want to end up selling these teams. Now here Dolan is saying that that is absolutely no thought, he says. So I asked Tommy, before we even get, well, no, I asked you first. Do you believe him? Do you believe that he has no thought of selling the Knicks, despite what he told the Times?
Yeah, look, I think he's obviously considered it. Any person with an entity that valuable, and it's whether he's going to say how he loves it. He didn't quite say that, but he said I don't really hate it. It's clearly not his life's calling. It's certainly not something he seems like he overly enjoys. As we talked about, that could change. The Knicks start winning and the Rangers do well, etc. But I think, and even if he had considered it, I don't think he's going to sell anytime soon. But it's we know this from we talked about fantasy football. If you're looking to trade your wide receiver, you're not going to say, listen, I desperately need a running back. I got to get rid of this guy. I have way too many wide receivers, so just give me, no, I wouldn't trade Justin Jefferson for all the world, whatever the case might be. It's smart businessman, understands. I'm sure he talked to his lawyers. I'm sure he talked to his PR people. Number one, let's walk back this woe is me. I'm the billionaire, owner who was gifted the Knicks and the Rangers. So feel sorry for me because sometimes people say mean things to me. So walk that back and then walk, where, I could consider selling the team, that type of thing. Let's make it a commodity that's just unavailable to even the world's wealthiest human beings, a priceless entity, if you will. So I think that's probably a little bit more of that involved in the situation. And, as you mentioned, just try to do the PR thing and kind of walk back some of those comments.
Yeah, I think, look, these people who work at the Times are extremely talented reporters, and I think that they probably got James Dolan very comfortable in their setting. And Dolan, as we've seen in previous interviews, for someone who claims to loathe, I don't know if he claims to loathe the media. I don't know if he said that publicly at least, but for those who acts like they loathe the media, I think he does enjoy talking to people. I think he does enjoy actually talking about himself and just how he feels. I imagine when you're someone as rich as he is and as powerful as he is, you probably don't have many very trusted confidants that aren't people who work for you or people who are asking you for something or whatever. So I get the impression that maybe he got extremely comfortable with the Times reporters. I don't want to give him the credit of saying, oh, he didn't realize he's on the record. I think he's smart enough to know that. But I think he got very comfortable. I think he was being honest, and he got caught saying something maybe a little too honest. Look, I've said long time, and I said it last week, and I'll say it again. I don't think this thing of James Dolan holding Knicks is just it's an infinite kind of thing. I do think he's going to sell the team at some point, and I don't really buy that it's not going to be. I said I gave you 10 years. Yes, last week I still would give that as kind of like a benchmark number. That I think 10 years. I think we'll see Madison Square Garden, not the Madison Square Garden, but I think the Knicks owned by somebody else. Maybe he's never get a Madison Square Garden. I think the showman in him won't ever allow the entertainment aspect of the Garden and Radio City and all that stuff to ever leave his grasp. But I think the sports aspect of that he's not an athlete or anything like that. Not someone who's grew up in running a basketball teams or hockey teams. That aspect, I don't think he's going to keep forever. So I do think that he will sell. I don't really buy that he's never thought about it. I think he absolutely does. He has, but yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think a lot of it probably will depend on the short, middle term here is how financially successful the Sphere is out in Vegas. They sunk a ton of money into that project, in the billions range. So,
and that's why he did this interview. It was supposed to be, mostly I think about the Sphere.
Yep. Try to pump out some get that kind of on the map for people. So I don't know what that looks like in terms of profit and loss, etc. I have no idea what they're expecting and what the expectations are, etc. But obviously, you invest that amount of money. We'll see. Do they get the big MMA fights? Do they get the big boxing matches? Do they get an all-star game? So something along those lines. Obviously, that's what they're looking for. You get a big arena. Do they get the Taylor Swift show when she comes back to comes back stateside. Do they get? I guess they're going to in-house. That they're kind of people. So if that is a huge money-making endeavor, and the Knicks billion can make from the Knicks is changing the couch. We'll see if he considers selling it. I guess a lot of it probably depends on his children. I think he has 5 boys. I think he has 5 sons. So are they interested? Is he going to, hand it down to the one thing I didn't understand was the sleepy part of traditionally owning a sports franchise is if you have the money to put up front, you're going to make 300, 400, 1,000x of whatever initial down payment you invest. I assume at some point that has to slow down, but you look at the NBA the costs just years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago is astronomically a sound financial investment. Obviously, the issue is coming up with the 500 million. Now you're talking crazy numbers just to get into the club. But once you're in there, you just sit back and get high off the interest because the money is crazy.
Yeah, it's funny when I took the sleepy comment to basically be him saying this is not like it's not risky. Like it's not like I think if you are like a businessman, like there is I think these guys get like almost a high and saying, oh, I'm investing in this and we'll see what happens or whatever. Right. I think it is the thing that you mentioned where it's just like you throw the money in and it's like, all right, now I'm printing money and you're kind of just done.
Yep.
And I think for him, he's probably upset about that. He's probably like, this is like, a thing that doesn't do anything, So yeah, it is interesting. Again, it's a perspective I would never have. Like again, the idea of like owning an NBA team being described as sleepy is just like crazy. But I've never been a billionaire who owns Madison Square Garden who has basically the world at my fingertips. For him, I guess it is. So yeah, I mean, I think with Dolan, he just has this like impetus to like need to have to be in the spotlight. And like it's funny for like again for someone who has everything, like he did not have to say any of this stuff to the Times. He could have told them, I only want to talk about the Sphere. That really was his only goal. And they could ask him questions. He could say, I'm good with the Knicks. I don't really talk much about that, or like team's doing well and I'm fine with it. But it's just again, there's something again for someone who claims to like not enjoy media. There's something about him that I think really does enjoy getting his word out, getting his feelings out, getting his thoughts out. And then we end up getting here. And it ends up causing distractions. But I will say this. I feel like, I don't know how you feel, Tommy. I feel like it feels like this group, the head coach, the players, the front office, it feels like this group has handled like Dolan's eccentricities maybe the best I've seen of any group yet. Like maybe the Woodson, Grunwald, right. that they handled it pretty well, but it felt like Mills and what's the name were just like deer in headlights. It felt like almost like Phil Jackson kind of was just doing his own thing. There was no consistency amongst like top down what the Knicks direction was or what their philosophy was. It just feels like now Dolan can do these things, and it almost seems like it doesn't really impact them the way it used to.
Yeah, I think to his credit, Dolan, finally got the memo and stay out of the basketball affairs. Obviously the Melo decision and the rumors and it's the Kyle Lowry trade that didn't happen because Dolan put the kibosh on it because of the Bargnani trade that got screwed on. So he finally said it started with Phil Jackson. He said, "Listen, I'm just gonna here's the keys. Please don't crash the car." And Phil Jackson crashed the car. So he took the keys back and then gave it to to Perry and Mills for a little while. But now with Leon Rose, he obviously has a true established professional, tons of experience in the business of basketball, and he's obviously done a good job thus far. It's hard to there's certainly small. You can have some quibbles with the Leon Rose, some of the decisions they made, trades, etc., signings that haven't quite worked out. But looking at the big picture, the Knicks are in the best position they've been, certainly this century, which says a whole lot. And they're continuing to trend in the right direction. And you mentioned and a lot of it has to do with continuity and all sides kind of being aligned. That's never perfect. We know about the Tibbs didn't want Cam Reddish, Leon Rose did, or the front office did. So they haven't been in lockstep completely. But make no mistake, there was decisions to be made right around the last couple of years. Was, do we tank and do we kind of chase Wembayana, and all
Yeah.
these draft picks, especially the Scoot Henderson Wembayana draft. Nick said, no, we're hiring a win now coach, and we're going to get win now players. They've been firm on that kind of that direction, that path they've chosen to go down, and they've been steadfast in that direction. The good news is they haven't wavered. That's what kind of where you get in trouble. That's where you land in like the 12 seed area, where you're not good enough to be good, but you're not bad enough to be bad. And the real credit for the Leon Rose and front office is they've managed to walk this line while also protecting their future first round draft picks and their young players. So they've made some good draft picks late in the first round. Obviously with Grimes and Quickley. Obi was a misstep. Again, they haven't been perfect. But listen, the Knicks were, made it to the second round of the playoffs last year, don't have a single player on the roster over $30 million, have all their own draft picks plus 3 additional future first rounders. So like we've talked about for the last, 6-10 months, things are trending in the right direction. So you have to give the front office a lot of credit for that. And then, to be fair, you got to give the owner, the guy who put the front office in place, his respect and his credit for as well.
Yeah, and the reason why I highlight the way they've handled Dolan is because I remember when Dolan came on WFAN, and I think he kind of mentions it briefly in this interview. In WFAN interview, he said, my only gripe or not my only, rule for Leon and the team is, hey, you have to listen to me. You don't have to do everything I say. And I think here he kind of mentions that, oh yeah, they hear my advice, whatever, but then they do their own thing. It feels like, again, like I had imagined, like Dolan kind of giving his input on things and him maybe saying things that would make very little sense. It's got to be tough to be like, okay, thank you, and I'm going to ignore you now. So right. Again, that's why I give them credit, because like I think other owners, I think we know Isaiah Thomas struggled with it mightily during that time.
Yes.
for James Dolan. I know Donnie Walls essentially got thrown out of the way during the middle trade stuff because he couldn't kind of keep that middle game of placating Dolan while also keeping him to a distance. So I think we talk about Leon Rose's background as an agent, and I kind of wonder if him being able to kind of massage Dolan as a team owner who probably has a instinct to want to meddle, by also reassuring him, hey, like everything's fine, we're doing everything right, and so far it's been a great marriage here. But yeah, we'll continue to follow, I guess, the future of the Knicks and whether Dolan is indeed as invested, it's staying as the owner, as he says here in this interview. But I do want to move on to one of the burning questions heading into this season, which is what will happen with super sub Emmanuel Quickley. So IQ is in the final year of his contract and is up for an extension. Talk has been mum on any progress regarding a contract extension, but according to the Athletic's Fred Katz, there is hope that a deal will be reached. Katz did an article today where he talked about the several interesting questions heading into this Knicks season, and one of them being the Emmanuel Quickley contract situation. And this is what Katz says about it. Quote, based on conversations I've had with people in the know, there's optimism that a deal can get done. There's a 24-year-old who is already one of the team's best players. He's coming off his best season ever. Chances are Quickley will continue to improve. Even if he were to stagnate, he'd still be among the league's best bench weapons. Later, at other parts in the article, he mentioned how there even questions around the Knicks as to what the hell happened to Emmanuel Quickley during the playoffs. A guy who was, as he mentioned, an absolute force coming off the bench. He just could not get it going at any point. It was not good in the Cleveland series, not good in the Miami series, and then he got hurt, and then he was essentially done for the playoffs. And that Tom Thibodeau actually lost confidence in Emmanuel Quickley during this playoff run. So regardless of that stuff happening, there's still hope that the Knicks will get a deal done with Emmanuel Quickley. I want to ask you this because I don't know if we really talked much about this aspect of the Quickley deal. Do you think a deal has to get done before the season for Emmanuel Quickley?
Technically, no. I'll kind of cop out and give a technically no answer because he's still going to be restricted at the end of the season. And if you want, again, that's the purpose of the restricted rights. That's kind of the Knicks' leverage in negotiations is, listen, we love you. This is not the reflection of you or how we feel about you. That whole thing. We want you here desperately, but your agent's not really working with us. So, we're going to keep you, we're just going to kick the can down the road. Next summer, we'll have a little bit more flexibility with free agency. We can sign some free agents and then ink you to an extension, which we can get creative with the salary cap. That's the front office is keen on that. So that's why I will say all hope is not lost for Knick fans that desperately want to keep IQ in New York. That being said, I think at the end of the day, this deal gets done this summer. I think prior to the start of in the next month or so. We're recording on Monday afternoon. The season opener is 1 month from today, October 25th. So I think Quickley has until October 24th at midnight or noon or something like that. I believe the extension deadline is the day before the start of their season, or it's the start of the regular season, and there's 2 games that are played on the 24th, so maybe it's the 23rd. Either way, the reason I think I think we've kind of assumed that there is reason for optimism because the sides can't be too far apart. I shouldn't say definitely aren't.
Yeah.
The only way they'd be too far apart is if Quickley says, I'm not signing an extension. I think I'm a max player.
Right.
I think I'm going to average, I saw what Jalen Brunson did. You talked about it before. If don't have a roadblock in front of me, I feel like I can be one of the 10 best, 15 best starting point guards in the NBA. That translates to a salary of $28 million a year, $30 million a year. So I want a 4-year, $120 million contract. If that's the case, then that's the case. Then the Knicks' hands are kind of tied in some respect because I think you have to draw a line in the sand somewhere. I again, as we've discussed, I think the Knicks will probably initially offer somewhere. Like I thought the RJ Barrett, I thought there could be a wide gap between what the Knicks were willing to offer and what and RJ saying I want
RJ was signed for. Yeah,
I thought that that was a reasonable outcome, a reasonable possibility. They just couldn't come to terms. Again, with Quickley. Does he think he could probably get more money if he was a starter somewhere else? Probably. Is he going to be a starter in New York? Probably not. That being said, he seems to embrace his role off the bench. There's going to be opportunities for him to start games because of his versatility. They can start him at the 2. They can start him at the 1. He's going to get plenty of playing time no matter where he is. And from a Knicks perspective, having players like this that are really impactful on both ends of the floor. The Knicks have trouble shooting 3-pointers. They have trouble stretching the floor.
Yeah,
they're their best 3-point shooters. He's their best point of attack defender. So you have your ability to put him and Hart and Robinson on the floor at the same time. That's like 3 levels of defense that are very important for Tibbs. The plus-minus numbers speak volumes. He has one of the best plus-minus numbers in the league. Among all players, let alone bench players, since the start of the prior season, so for the last 2 years. So all that being said, I think the Knicks initially proposed like a 4-year, $80 million contract. Quickly counters with a 4-year, 110, and they meet somewhere in the 90, 95 range. I think that's kind of where it gets ironed out. Maybe the Knicks, dig their toes in and say, listen, we can't pay a dime over 85. And Quickley says, I'm not selling anything less than 95 or 100, whatever the case is. It's feasible. It's certainly a possibility, but both sides are taking risks there. Quickley in that, let's say, not only, could he play poorly, this upcoming season, we know that injuries, nothing's guaranteed. There's all that stuff to get factored in. And then on the Knicks side, if he does break out or continues to play well, all it takes is one team with cap space next summer to make an exorbitant offer that needs a starting point guard. And then you have to match, and you have to pay the equivalent of 2 starting point guards. And that's something that the Knicks will be hesitant to do. So I think both sides are motivated to get something done. And I expect, gun to my head, I'd say there's probably like a 75% chance, somewhere along those lines, that a deal gets done.
Yeah, I think with Quickley, it's interesting because, as you mentioned with RJ Barrett and several other players, and we've talked about it on the pod before, like, we kind of make the jokes about, this Knicks thing being like a family, whether it's the the Fast and Furious family or the mafia type family, but like the fact that Leon takes care of all his people, and like that is essentially has been the case. Like even with RJ Barrett, which again you thought maybe would be the most contentious negotiation, it seemed to be very little contention at all when it came to that. I think with Mitchell Robinson, where even though it wasn't a extension, they weren't able to extend him. He goes free agency, he signs in the first like 20 minutes of free agency. He's back with the Knicks. Like whatever, like the situation comes when it comes to protecting their own or keeping their own. Julius Randle, his first contract extension. Knicks seem to be able to just get these deals done. They're relatively team friendly, and then they just move on. For all the things you mentioned, which are things I mentioned on the show, it feels like Quickley could be the one that you would think maybe be the most wiggle room and most kind of like dicey situation where if Emmanuel really looks at where he's at in his career and says like, I'm not going to start with the Knicks as long as Jalen Brunson's here, and if I don't start here, then that caps how much money I can make in my career here. Like just back up the starting point. The backup point guards don't make $150 million a year. Just they don't exist. So am I happy with that? Do I think I can do more? When you consider how well he played as a starter, I would maybe think he's had to at least thought about the idea of maybe wanting to be a starting point guard somewhere.
And we've seen in the NBA before, it's not just about money all the time. It's not just about being winning and in the right situation.
Right.
With Jeremy Grant, left the Pistons, went to the Pistons just to be the man, basically equivalent money. But listen, that's a player's prerogative, and Quickley doesn't seem like that type of player or that type of guy, but it's his prerogative, it's his choice. We'll see.
Yeah. So if he decides to make that choice, that's where maybe we're just dicey, where maybe he does ask for a certain number, and the Knicks have to then start to really get concerned about, do we give him this number? Or do we just risk it in restricted free agency, hope that no one else gives it to him? So like, I think for the Knicks, here's the reason why I think they really do have to sign him before this season. And it goes back to Dolan, quite frankly, because it feels like when Dolan and the Knicks have had issues with guys and giving out contracts and trying to re-sign them, and if there is an extension situation where they can't get it done or negotiating thinks it's going to go one way and it goes left, I mean, he's jumped in and said, you know what, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And we saw that primarily with Jeremy Lin, where you had a contract that they thought was going to be a certain thing, became something else, and Dolan was like, it's not worth it to bring this guy back based on not getting him the number we thought we were going to be getting him at. I would wonder if IQ really does play hardball with the Knicks and decide, I'm going to take this to restricted free agency, and then there is a restricted free agency offer that is exorbitant. I don't know if Dolan would sign off on IQ getting $110 million or $105 million. Like that would be maybe the line where Dolan steps in, only because we know how James can be. We know he can be a very tough, sometimes a little vengeful businessman. And that would concern me a little bit. I think if they could just get the deal done, not to worry about restricted free agency, not to worry about other teams getting involved in negotiations, they could just keep it to IQ and the Knicks, I think everything goes fine. If it becomes a thing where it gets to restricted free agency, and he's talking to other teams, and Dolan then talks to kind of peek and see what's going on, that would then concern me a little bit about IQ and whether or not he's able to remain a Knick.
Yeah, listen, there are a couple different ways where things can go sideways here. So it'll be interesting to see how IQ handles it, kind of, on media day or content day, as the Knicks call it next week. To see,
that's what they're calling it, content day. I didn't even realize that.
That in last couple of years they mentioned that, which is ridiculous. I assume they'll do it this year. Maybe they won't. Actually, the Greg Schwartz, who was the head of VP, I just sent Knicks an email the other day, and I got it out of office. No longer with the company, so they're going to have a new PR person kind of handling the day-to-day stuff for the Knicks. I'm not sure if they've made it public who they've hired, but it'll be interesting to see. We'll see. You assume IQ will say the right thing and play the company line and next question it. But maybe he comes out and says, listen, I think I deserve this. I think I'm worthy of this. Maybe that causes a little bit of drama. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But again, the one card the kind of Knicks have up their sleeve is, listen, if this is not the last year that we basically control what we do with the players. So that's something that the Knicks fans should at least feel confident in.
Yeah, the Emmanuel Quickley extension will remain a storyline until it eventually gets done or something else happens. I hope nothing else happens. I want Emmanuel Quickley to remain a Knick, but the position he plays, the positioning he has on this team, I think this makes this a little different than the other players the Knicks have had to re-sign and bring in back to the fold, whether it's Randall, RJ, or Mitchell Robinson. So it'll be definitely an interesting situation to continue to follow. Okay, so some familiar faces and voices could be joining Madison Square Garden's TV booth this season. So according to the Daily News, NBA TV sources say MSG Network is considering adding Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy as fill-in color analysts for some road games as Clyde Frazier scales back his travel schedule. So the Daily News says the former Knicks point guard and former Knicks head coach are among several names being considered. The two formed a trio with Mike Green that called the NBA Finals and some of the biggest games on both ESPN and ABC for pretty much more than a decade. So when they were let go this summer, came with a lot of disappointment from a lot of fans who enjoyed that three-man booth of Breen, JVG, and Mark Jackson. And now that three-man booth could potentially be a fixture of MSG televised Knick games this season. I mean, it sounds kind of unbelievable, but this is what is being reported by the Daily News. So, Tommy, would you be on board with Jeff Van Gundy and or Mark Jackson joining the broadcast team?
Yeah, I've never been a big Mark Jackson fan, but he would be an upgrade over like the Wiley Zerbiaks and the other guys that they have filled in for, Walt on the road in the past. So I'd be cool with that. I'd love to get Van Gundy in the booth. Obviously, we know both of those guys have a great rapport. With Breen, they've a decade working the biggest games in the sport, the last decade or so. So that wouldn't be an issue. Breen would love to have it. Maybe there's a little more fun that they could have on MSG broadcast. My thinking, however, was, circling back to Dolan, would he be okay with, Van Gundy's never been shy to kind of get after guys that they're not hustling that are, not playing up to their level that they should. Would Van Gundy would Dolan be okay with Van Gundy kind of being critical of the Knicks at times on the air? Also, there's been a beef between those two dating back to Van Gundy's exit, 19 games into the season, 23 years ago now. Has that hatchet been buried? Van Gundy never, there's been some talk that he was interviewed when the Knicks were looking for head coaches, but that never really seemed to gain traction. So is that a Dolan kind of top-down thing? We'll see if that's the case.
Yeah, it's the Jeff Van Gundy angle is the one that is interesting, given how things ended with him as Knicks head coach. Given how, as you mentioned, Jeff will get after guys who aren't playing hard, poor coaching decisions, and that's what makes him one of the better in-game analysts we have in the NBA. Why he was so successful over there at ESPN. I think it's something that Knicks fans would absolutely crave to have an analyst who will bring that kind of honesty to their broadcast. And Clyde's great. And I think Clyde's a little underrated with how he gets after the Knicks. He does it more, I think, as a team when they're playing very poorly. He'll get after them, say they're not hustling, whatever.
He'll just do more. He's just disappointed as opposed to angry, just a disappointed dad.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna say great point. Yeah, it's almost like a disappointed dad when he's talking about the Knicks, playing with no fire and no desire. We've heard that plenty, definitely over the last 20 years. With Jeff, it will be a lot more like a coach who's like, these guys aren't playing hard. That you got to take guys out when they don't play the right way. So that would be a very interesting element to the MSG broadcast that we have not had. I mean, Marv Albert was essentially fired because he was too critical of the team, and that's a play-by-play analyst who, who's only making comments here or there when the Knicks aren't playing well. Imagine if you have a color analyst who he's actually analyzing the game and he's breaking down things that are not doing well. It would be a definitely a different kind of deal. I tend to feel like the Jeff Van Gundy Dolan thing probably is cool at this point. I mean, Van Gundy, I think, was there when they honored the 99 team. I want to say, I don't know how long ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, because they have that infamous picture of him with the jacket. And he's standing with guys. It's a really funny picture. And he's spoken well of Dolan and the Knicks in the recent years. Of course, he's been up for jobs there, so he probably made sense for him to speak well of the organization. So I would hope that things have cooled between those guys. There isn't a beef that's long standing, though. Dolan's one to hold a grudge, so I guess we'll have to see how that goes. But I would love this. I said it when this thing broke down with Jeff Van Gundy first, and then eventually Mark Jackson. That I thought that Jeff Van Gundy should be the future, replacement for Walt Clyde Frazier whenever he decides to eventually step away. If you can make this a 3-man booth and that's your 3-man booth for Knicks games, I mean, that becomes like I mean, that becomes almost must-watch television for teams outside of people who watch the Knicks. I think people who maybe have their own home broadcast or and they don't live in their local networks. I think on League Pass, they'll turn on to the Knicks broadcast and want to hear just Breen, Jeff Van Gundy, and Mark Jackson going back and forth. So I would be all for this. Yeah, I definitely have been more of a Van Gundy guy than a Jackson guy. But I think Jackson would be really good too. I think the fact that he has New York roots, the fact that he grew up in New York City, played for the Knicks as well. I think it would be a unique twist to see them as a 3-man team, like focusing in on one team, because they're so used to being national guys where they're kind of just talking about various different people. But like I would be just like I would be amazed to see how that worked.
We got a special guest on the pod today.
Hey, what's up, little Tommy?
It's little Tommy. Say hi.
He's like, what? I didn't know I could be on camera.
This is your debut, and you're gonna get shy on me.
Young Tommy making a debut in the last week of Orange and Blue Bloods for Tommy Beer. Love it.
Who's your favorite player? He likes the color of the king. LeBron James.
Oh, LeBron. Who else doesn't love the king?
And Kobe. And this guy. Patrick Ewing. All right, go downstairs and play. I'll be down in a minute.
Oh man, shout out to Young Tommy. That is a special guest appearance right there. You don't get that on any other Knick podcast.
No.
I don't think you get it. Yeah, I don't think you get too many of those. Kobe, LeBron, Patrick Ewing. I mean, you can't be wrong with any of those guys being your favorite.
Yeah. He has a book with like those guys. For each letter, like A is Captain America for Kareem and M is for Magic.
That's so. You know me, I would love that because I'm a superhero.
Yes. The crazy thing is one of the guys, it's LeBron and Kobe and Wilt and Shaq and Dwayne Wade is Flash. A lot of other stuff. The crazy thing, one of the S is for Ben Simmons. Just to go show you how far like Ben Simmons has fallen.
Wow, he was considered one of the superheroes.
Old. He was like a guy, like minute. Like people thought he was going to be the next dude,
Yeah, I mean Ben Simmons. I mean his career track is kind of crazy. I mean there was a time where you thought that he was maybe the future of the NBA, and you sit here now and like he's basically fighting for his NBA career. It sounds like. By the way, now we're off the rails real quick, but I do have a question for you on this. Do you hear that he's going to be playing point guard this year for the Nets? That was the word.
Listen, he just needs to play, period. Like, don't worry about what he plays and how he plays. Just get him on the court, for 20 straight games and, for a couple months. See that he has his legs underneath him because the Nets are I think they're really going to be happy with that Kevin Durant trade. I think that was a really, really fortunate, way for them to reboot the franchise. Mikal Bridges is a stud. One of the best, we talk about Brunson's contract, Bridges is arguably, if not one in 1A, best contracts in the NBA, $25, $26 million a year for the next 3 years, until he leaves Brooklyn and comes to Manhattan. When he gets
all the Josh Hart tweets, I think that is something that they're definitely trying to work on. It seems like
definitely. It seems like it's only a matter of time. I'm sure Net fans hate it when they flirt on Twitter back and forth, him and Brunson and Josh Hart and those guys. So, but especially with DiVincenzo now in the mix and Arch back in New York, we'll see if it's a matter of time before they full Villanova starting five.
Yeah, on the Van Gundy Jackson front. Do you think that this ends up happening? Do you think that because it's hard to believe still. It's something we talked about it a lot. Like not just us, but a lot of Knicks fans when this thing happens, saying wouldn't it be great? Like these are two guys that are true Knicks roots that like are some of the best in the business at this job. Like it would be great. And Dolan has endless money because the other thing would be, well, can you afford them? Dolan can afford anything. So like in theory, like this would be amazing. But like, do you think it will actually happen? Because it sounds almost unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think if they see, does 3 games when they do a West Coast trip, and Van Gundy meets him in Houston, when they go play the Rockets, maybe they get together for a goof for 1 game in OKC, just something like that in Chicago or New York. They're both in town for something. They both with the Garden, and they text the collide as well. I think honestly the biggest issue is probably money. They would have to take such a massive pay cut to work for the Knicks, going from ABC, nationally televised games. I don't know what they were making, but it was a lot more than they were paying Alan Hahn or Wally Zerbiak to fill in for a couple games on the road.
Yeah, it's got to be millions. It's got to be millions they were making
at least.
Yeah.
So again, do they have Van Gundy, as we know, drove a Honda Accord, during his whole time when he was making millions, coaching the Knicks. So he's not a guy that's, obviously the dresses and, just the way he handles himself. He's not, you wouldn't think that would be a deal breaker. You'd have more than enough money in the bank now. But again, I don't think they want to commit to a full, 41 game schedule. Again, I think doing it part-time, filling in here and there, because, once you lower your, I'm sure their agents, et cetera, when lower your price point to such a point where if TNT makes an offer, they say, okay, we'll pay you twice as much as MSG is paying you, but that's 10% of what AP was paying. So financials, I think, are where it gets tricky. Again, unless they wanted to do just kind of a favor to Breen for the goof. They're bored. They're looking to get their name back in there. They want to talk some hoops because they haven't got another job. The other option is they could be gobbled up by TNT, or does Apple TV, when they get a new deal, bring those guys back together and kind of have them on retainer for a season. Even if they did get a TNT, they'd be cool with something in the contract that says I want to work 4 games a year with Breen on MSG. I think the Breen angle really helps makes it seem like it's feasible, because they could, it's justifiable to kind of do it as a favor to your buddy and just, work with a friend that you enjoy spending time with.
Yeah, and I would be curious in terms of the parameters of their ESPN contract. Are there kind of non-competes where, can they actually go to a national network and still get paid by ESPN? Like, I would wonder, because when I heard that this is a thing, I'm wondering if for them, they're like, look, we can get paid our full salary at ESPN for however long that is, if it's a year or 2 years. And if there's a non-compete for local games, the Breen does local games. So I'm assuming they can maybe do local games. Say, hey, we could do local, get some chump change doing that while we're waiting for our ESPN deal to expire, and then we go to Apple, we go to NBC, or we go to TNT, whatever the new landscape is once the new TV deal gets done. That I think is probably why this is even a thing. Like, I don't think this is possible if they have full non-competes and they can just if they don't have a non-compete and they can just go to TNT. I think that they would have been signed already, because you would think that TNT getting Jeff and Stan together would be like a thing you would do in a millisecond, you would think. I don't know how good it would be for TV in terms of if it'd be a good broadcast, but I think just in terms of the idea and just the headlines it would create, you have to try it.
Draw a lot of interest.
Yeah, you have to at least try it. So the fact that hasn't been done yet tells me that there's maybe a deal where they can just collect this money from ESPN until it expires, and that might be why they're doing this.
Yeah, I guess we assume we'll be hearing something soon. But I think, there's a lot of good points in terms of contractual language and et cetera that we just are not privy to. But again, season starts sooner than you think. So it's also something that maybe it's ESPN through December 31st, and they we find in early January where they're gonna hop on. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, exactly. But the news of Mark Jackson and JVG apparently being in the fold for potential MSG games. Very, very interesting development there. But that's going to do it for this edition of Orange Blue Bloods. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. Of course, if you enjoyed this episode, you can catch all our episodes wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Be sure to hit the auto download feature on your streaming service to get these episodes every time we drop. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube. You can find us on the WFAN channel, where we post not just the full clips, but segments from the show on WFAN's YouTube channel. So make sure you find us there. Tommy, let people know they can find you.
At Tommy Beer on Twitter.
You can follow me, EJ_Stewart on Twitter, Action EJ on Instagram. We have one more episode with this duo of Tommy Beer and EJ Stewart together. So make sure you check out the final episode coming up later this week. We'll drop that at some point later this week. We'll let you guys know when that drops. But thank you guys again so much for checking out this episode. For Tommy, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest podcast ventures. Links will be in the descriptions. And as always, thanks for watching, and we will see you in our next video.